At 64 years old, I thought I knew my son. I truly believed that no matter how distant he had grown, no matter how little he called or visited, there was still a line he would never cross. I was wrong. My name is Paula Grant. I am a mother, and for most of my life I measured my worth by how useful I could be to my only child, Logan Grant. Even after his father passed, even after he'd built a life that seemed to have no room for me, I kept telling myself the same quiet lie. He is busy, he is independent, he still loves you in his own way. Logan was never an affectionate child. He did not run into my arms or ask for advice. He observed, he calculated. When he grew older, I told myself that distance meant maturity, that silence meant strength. It never occurred to me that silence could also mean something else entirely. 3 years ago, Logan married Vanessa, and from that moment I felt myself slowly erased. Holidays became brief. Phone calls became rare. I learned not to ask questions because questions made things awkward. I learned to accept crumbs of attention, as if they were generosity. Then one Tuesday morning my phone rang. It was Logan. His voice sounded calm, controlled, almost formal. He told me he and his wife needed to leave town urgently, and that her mother was in a coma, after a serious accident. He said they needed someone they could trust to stay in the house and watch over her. Someone dependable. Someone who would not ask too many questions. I heard myself say yes before my mind could catch up. Because when your child finally needs you, you do not pause, you do not hesitate. You tell yourself this is love calling you home. And you step forward. I wish I had listened to the quiet fear in my chest that day, because that phone call was not a request for help. It was the opening move of a plan that would change my life forever. Logan had always been careful with his words. Even as a teenager, he spoke like someone weighing every sentence before letting it out. That morning was no different. "Mom, we need to leave town for a few days," he said. "It is urgent. Vanessa's mother had another episode. The doctors say she is stable, but she cannot be left alone." There was no panic in his voice, no fear, just information delivered calmly as if he were reading from a list. I asked how long they would be gone. 4 days, maybe 5, he replied. "The nurse will come twice a day. You just need to be there in case something happens." I should have asked why they did not hire full-time care. I should have wondered why they needed me specifically, but instead I felt something I had not felt in years. I felt needed. In my mind, this call rewrote the story I had been telling myself for so long. Maybe Logan had finally realized that family mattered. Maybe he trusted me more than anyone else. Maybe this was his quiet way of reaching back toward me. So I did what mothers like me always do. I minimized my doubts. I ignored the tight feeling in my stomach. I brushed aside the unease that whispered this did not feel right. I told myself emergencies do not come with perfect explanations. When your child asks for help, you show up. You do not interrogate, you do not protect yourself. You protect them. I packed a small bag. I canceled my plans. I told myself this was a chance to be useful again. I did not realize that usefulness was exactly why he had chosen me, and that my presence was about to become a weapon in someone else's plan. I arrived at Logan's house early Thursday morning with my overnight bag in hand, and a quiet sense of responsibility settling into my chest. From the outside, the house looked perfect. Clean lines, manicured lawn, large windows that let in plenty of light. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt it. The air was cold, not in temperature but in spirit. It was the kind of home designed to impress, not to comfort. Vanessa greeted me at the door with a polite smile, the kind that appears quickly and disappears just as fast. "Thank you so much for doing this, Paula," she said. "Mother has been very peaceful lately. The doctors say she is stable, but we just cannot risk leaving her alone." Logan appeared behind her, already checking his watch. "Our flight leaves in 3 hours. The nurse will be here at 9 in the morning and 6 in the evening. Everything is labeled." He spoke like someone handing off a task, not like a son asking his mother for help. They led me down the hallway to the guest room that had been converted into a medical space. Machines hummed softly. A hospital bed sat in the center of the room, surrounded by monitors and neatly organized supplies. Ruth Miller lay there motionless, her hair brushed carefully, her face pale and still. She looked less like someone suffering and more like someone waiting. Vanessa leaned close to the bed and spoke in a hushed tone. "She has not been conscious in months. Sometimes I talk to her, but the doctors say there is no awareness left." As she said it, her eyes never softened. That was the moment something inside me shifted. because grief usually carries warmth. What I saw instead was control. After Logan and Vanessa left, the house fell into an unnatural silence. No footsteps. No voices. Only the steady mechanical beeping from Ruth's room marking time in a way that felt ominous rather than comforting. I stood in the hallway for a long moment trying to shake the unease crawling up my spine. Then I told myself I was being dramatic. People in comas do not suddenly wake up. Machines do not lie. Doctors do not make mistakes that big. I went back into the room to straighten the blanket that had slipped slightly off Ruth's shoulder. When my fingers touched her forehead, everything changed. Her eyes snapped open. Not slowly, not confused, wide open and alert as if she had been waiting for that exact moment. I gasped and stumbled backward, my heart slamming against my chest. Her eyes locked onto mine. "Thank God," she whispered. Her voice was rough but clear. I was starting to think they would never leave. For a second I could not breathe. My knees felt weak and my hands trembled uncontrollably. "Ruth, you are awake," I said. The words felt unreal as they left my mouth. She shifted slightly, wincing in pain. "Help me, please. I have been lying still for so long my muscles are screaming." The room seemed to tilt. "But Logan said," Vanessa said. "The doctor said you were in a coma." Ruth let out a short, bitter laugh. "Oh, Paula," she said quietly, "there is so much you do not know." She reached for my hand and gripped it with surprising strength. "They think I am unconscious because that is what they need everyone to believe." In that instant, I knew with chilling certainty that I had stepped into something far darker than a family emergency. And there was no turning back. I sank into the chair beside the bed because my legs could no longer support me. My mind was racing, trying to reconcile what I was seeing with everything I had been told. Ruth did not look confused. She did not look fragile. Her eyes were sharp, focused, and painfully aware. "They are drugging me, Paula," she said quietly. "Every day, sometimes twice a day. Vanessa gives me injections that force my body into this state. She tells everyone they are prescribed medications, but they are not." I shook my head in disbelief. That is impossible. Why would anyone do that to their own mother? Ruth closed her eyes for a moment as if steadying herself. "Because they are stealing everything I own. And as long as I am silent, I cannot stop them." My heart began to pound so hard it felt painful. Stealing what? My bank accounts. My investments. My house. They forged documents claiming I gave them power of attorney while I was supposedly unconscious. They have already taken hundreds of thousands of dollars. The words landed like physical blows. I whispered Logan would never do something like that. He is my son. Ruth looked at me with a sadness that cut deeper than anger ever could. "Your son is not who you think he is, Paula. And Vanessa is far worse." She squeezed my hand. "Sometimes I fight the drugs long enough to hear them talking. They think I am completely gone, so they speak freely. They laugh about how easy this has been." My stomach twisted. "Last week I heard them arguing about timing," Ruth continued. "About when to let me slip away naturally." She opened her eyes and fixed them on mine. "They are planning my death." The room felt suffocating. I could barely form the words. "You are saying they want to kill you?" Ruth nodded slowly. "And I believe you are in danger too." The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, something inside me broke. The image of my son that I had protected for decades shattered completely. I was no longer a guest helping family. I was standing in the middle of a crime. And I was terrified. I stood up and paced the room, trying to calm the panic rising in my chest. Every instinct told me this could not be real. And yet every detail Ruth shared fit together with terrifying clarity. "How do you know all of this?" I asked. "How could they move money without you signing anything?" Ruth let out a slow breath. "They used something called power of attorney. They forged my signature and claimed I had signed it before the accident. With that one document they gained access to everything." She explained it simply so I could understand. Once they controlled my finances, they did not need to rush. They tested the system first. Small withdrawals, a few thousand here and there. No alarms, no questions. When nothing happened, they became bold. Retirement accounts were emptied. Investments liquidated. My house was quietly listed for sale under the excuse of medical expenses. I felt sick. Logan's new car, the renovations to this house, the expensive trips they suddenly started taking. I had assumed his career was finally thriving. I was wrong. They needed witnesses, Ruth said softly, people who would say I never woke up, that I was unaware, that I could not object. She looked directly at me. That is why they asked you to come. The realization hit me like ice water. My presence here was not kindness, it was insurance. If something happened to Ruth, I would be the grieving family member who confirmed the story, the devoted mother-in-law who never saw signs of awareness, the perfect shield against suspicion. I thought about how easily I had said yes, how eager I had been to feel useful. They did not choose me by accident. They chose me because I loved my son. And love made me blind. For the first time in my life, I understood that loyalty without truth is not virtue. It is vulnerability. And I was standing in the most dangerous place of all, between a mother fighting for her life and the son who was willing to take it. Ruth closed her eyes for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was steady, but heavy with exhaustion. They are not planning to keep this going much longer, Paula, she said. I heard them discussing it before they left. They called it the final phase. My chest tightened. What does that mean? It means they will slowly increase the doses until my breathing weakens and my heart becomes irregular. It will look like my body is simply giving up, a natural progression, no alarms, no questions. I felt dizzy as the weight of her words settled in. They are going to make it look like an accident. Yes, Ruth replied, and they have already decided when it will happen, soon, within days of their return. I pressed my hands together, trying to stop them from shaking. And where do I fit into this? Ruth looked at me with painful honesty. You are the witness, the loving mother who stayed by my side, the one who will say I never opened my eyes, that I never spoke, that I passed peacefully. My throat closed. They are using me to erase you, I whispered. Ruth nodded. They know you are trusted. They know no one would question your word, especially not when you are grieving. I thought about Logan's voice on the phone. Calm. Controlled. Certain. He had already written the ending of the story and cast me in my role without asking. And if I refuse, I asked? Ruth hesitated. That silence was answer enough. Paula, she said quietly, I believe if you become a problem, they will find a way to remove you too. In that moment, fear transformed into something else. Clarity. This was no longer about money or betrayal. This was about survival. And if I did nothing, an innocent woman would die. And my silence would make me complicit. I stood there staring at Ruth while my mind raced through every possible outcome, calling the police, running out of the house, pretending I had never heard any of this. Every option carried risk. Every option felt terrifying. I am not a brave woman, Ruth, I said quietly. I have lived my life avoiding conflict. I raised my son to stay out of trouble, not to confront it. Ruth reached for my hand again. I know. That is why they chose you. They believe fear will keep you silent. Her words settled heavily in my chest. You still have a choice, Paula, she continued. You can leave. You can tell them you cannot handle this and walk away. I will not blame you. I imagined packing my bag and driving home, closing my door and pretending this nightmare never happened, letting the system handle whatever came next. But I already knew the truth. There was no system here, only manipulation dressed up as care. Lies dressed up as medical necessity. If I left, Ruth would die. I looked at her fragile body and then at her eyes still burning with awareness and will. Something inside me shifted. The fear did not disappear, but it changed shape. I will not walk away, I said slowly. If they are using me as a witness, then I will become the wrong one. Ruth's grip tightened. That is all I need, because I have been preparing for this moment longer than you know. She took a steady breath. We are going to expose them. Quietly, carefully, and completely. For the first time since Logan called me that Tuesday morning, I was no longer reacting. I was choosing. And that choice would decide who lived and who fell. We moved carefully for the rest of that day, speaking in low voices and stopping every time the house made a sound. Even the walls felt like they were listening. Ruth told me where to look. She had memorized their habits, their schedules, and their hiding places. During the long hours, she was forced to lie still and pretend she was not there. Start in Logan's office, she whispered. Top drawer behind the tax folders. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents that made my stomach turn. Copies of power of attorney forms, medical directives, and bank authorizations, all signed in Ruth's name. The signatures looked practiced, not natural. When I compared them to an old birthday card she had kept in her bedside drawer, the difference was obvious. They practiced forging it, Ruth said quietly. I caught Vanessa tracing my signature months ago. She said she was helping me write thank you notes. We photographed everything and returned it exactly as we found it. Next came the medications, hidden boxes in the bedroom closet, online invoices printed and filed away, sedatives, muscle relaxants, and drugs I could not pronounce, none of them listed on any legitimate prescription. She times the strongest doses before the nurse arrives, Ruth explained. That way no one ever sees me awake. The most chilling discovery was a small notebook tucked behind a row of hardback books. Vanessa's handwriting filled every page. Dates, times, dosages, observations. Subject remained unconscious for 19 hours. Increased dose tomorrow. Begin final phase after return. I felt sick reading it. She had reduced a living human being to an experiment. By the time we finished, my fear had hardened into something steadier, determination. We put everything back in place, not a single paper out of line, not a single bottle moved. Because the most dangerous moment was still ahead. They thought they were in control. And control makes people careless. All we had to do was let them believe they were winning. For a little while longer. Logan and Vanessa returned the following afternoon as if nothing in the world were wrong. Suitcases rolled across the floor, laughter echoed briefly down the hallway. To anyone watching from the outside, they looked like a couple relieved to be home after a stressful trip. Logan hugged me quickly. Thanks again for everything, Mom. You have no idea how much this helps us. His voice sounded warm, familiar, convincing. Vanessa went straight to Ruth's bedside, her face already arranged into an expression of concern. Has anything changed? She asked softly. Any signs of awareness? No, I replied evenly. She has been very peaceful. I hated how easy the lie came. Vanessa nodded as if reassured and immediately began checking the equipment, adjusting IV lines and making notes on a chart. She moved with confidence, like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Logan hovered nearby, asking careful questions. Did the nurse mention anything unusual? Was her breathing steady? Did she respond at all when you spoke to her? Each question felt like a test. That evening they began laying the groundwork, just as Ruth had warned me. Logan spoke about how unpredictable brain injuries could be. Vanessa mentioned how doctors had prepared them for sudden declines. Sometimes patients seem stable for months, Logan said quietly. Then everything changes very fast. Vanessa added, I just want you to be prepared, Paula. The next few days might be hard. I nodded, playing my part as the worried mother. Inside I was counting every word. Because each sentence they spoke was another thread tightening the net around them. They believed I was still blind. They believed Ruth was still silent. And that belief was about to cost them everything. That night the house felt heavier than before, as if it were holding its breath. Even the lights seemed dimmer, casting long shadows along the hallway leading to Ruth's room. After dinner, Vanessa announced it was time for Ruth's evening medications. She spoke casually as she prepared the syringes, lining them up with practiced precision. Each movement was calm, controlled, and terrifying. This might be a good time for you to observe, Paula, she said, in case you ever need to help again. Logan stood in the doorway watching me closely. His eyes were sharp now, no warmth left in them. Vanessa explained each drug in a soothing tone. Pain management, muscle relaxation, sleep support. Her words were gentle, but her hands told a different story. She measured carefully, adjusted the dosage, and smiled faintly as if satisfied. I felt my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. As she moved toward the IV line, Logan spoke. Mom, we need to talk after this. About what happens next. My chest tightened. What do you mean? He lowered his voice. Ruth is not going to last much longer. And when it happens, we will need you to help us explain things. No confusion, no doubts. Vanessa paused and looked at me. You want to help us do the right thing, don't you? The threat was clear even without words. I nodded slowly. Of course. Inside, every instinct screamed. Vanessa raised the syringe toward the IV port. This was the moment Ruth had warned me about. The point of no return. I stepped closer to the bed and said softly I would like a moment with her first. Logan hesitated, then nodded. Take your time. I leaned down, brushing Ruth's hand as if saying goodbye. and I whispered one word. Now. The room was about to change forever. Ruth's eyes opened instantly. Not slowly, not weakly, she sat up with a strength that sent the color draining from Logan's face. Vanessa screamed and dropped the syringe. It clattered across the floor, spilling its contents like water that could no longer drown the truth. "Hello, Vanessa," Ruth said calmly. "You look surprised." Logan staggered backward. "This is not possible. You are confused. You are brain damaged." "Am I?" Ruth replied evenly. She reached to the bedside table and picked up a small recording device. "Then perhaps you can explain this." She pressed a button. The room filled with Logan's voice, recorded clearly and unmistakably. "Ruth is going to die this week, and my mother will help us make sure no one questions it." Vanessa collapsed into a chair, her hands shaking. Logan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "We have everything," Ruth continued. "The documents, the drugs, the journal. Every word you said when you thought I could not hear." I felt tears burning my eyes, not from fear but from release. Before either of them could move, there was a loud knock at the front door, followed by another. "Police, open the door." Logan dropped to his knees. Vanessa sobbed. And for the first time since this nightmare began, the power in that house shifted completely. The silence no longer belonged to them. The house filled with voices and heavy footsteps as officers moved quickly through every room. Logan and Vanessa were separated, handcuffed, and read their rights while they stared at the floor, unable to look at either of us. Logan kept repeating the same words. "This is a misunderstanding. She is confused. My mother is confused too." No one listened. The evidence spoke louder than anything he could say. The forged documents, the illegal medications, the recordings, the journal. It was all there, laid out in plain sight. As they led Logan away, he turned and looked at me. His eyes were filled with anger and something else I did not recognize as love. "How could you do this to your own son?" he asked. I met his gaze calmly. "You stopped being my son the moment you decided another human life was disposable." Vanessa did not say a word as she was taken out of the house. Later we learned the full weight of the charges: elder abuse, financial fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, each one carrying years that would add up to decades behind bars. The money they stole was frozen and returned. The house sale was reversed. Everything they tried to erase was restored. Justice did not arrive loudly. It arrived thoroughly. And it stayed. The house felt different once they were gone, not empty, peaceful, as if something poisonous had finally been removed from the air. In the weeks that followed, Ruth's recovery surprised even her doctors. Once the drugs were out of her system, her strength returned steadily. She spoke clearly, remembered everything, and reclaimed control over her life piece by piece. As for me, I had to grieve someone who was still alive. Letting go of the son I thought I had raised was harder than I expected. There was no funeral, no ritual, just the quiet realization that the boy I loved no longer existed in any form that mattered. Ruth and I spent a lot of time together during that period, talking, sitting in silence, learning how to breathe again without fear. We were bound by something deeper than circumstance. We had both been underestimated, controlled, reduced to roles others thought we would accept. 6 months later, we stood side by side on the edge of a windswept cliff overlooking the ocean, two women who had survived betrayal and refused to be buried by it. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was honest. Healing does not mean forgetting. It means choosing yourself after someone else tried to erase you. And that choice changed everything. People often ask me what hurt more, the betrayal or the fear. The truth is neither. What hurt most was realizing how easily love can be used against you when you are taught that loyalty means silence. When you believe being a good parent means never questioning your child even when your instincts are screaming. I learned something too late, but I learned it fully. Love does not require blindness. Family does not excuse cruelty. And silence does not make you noble when it protects harm. If I had ignored that moment when Ruth opened her eyes, if I had told myself it was not my place to interfere, an innocent woman would be dead, and I would be living with that truth forever. Choosing to speak cost me my son. But choosing silence would have cost me my soul. At 64, I started over. Not with regret. With clarity. I learned that courage is not loud. Sometimes it is just one person deciding to say this is wrong and refusing to step aside. If you are watching this and something in your life feels off, trust that feeling. If someone tells you to stay quiet for the sake of family, ask yourself who that silence is protecting. And if you are standing at a crossroads between comfort and truth, choose truth even when it is terrifying. Because peace built on lies never lasts. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what you would have done in my place. Like, share, and subscribe if you want more stories about quiet strength and hard-earned justice. Some endings break you. Others finally set you free.